Hey there, Stuart Matola here, and I help men get unstuck in their relationship. And I'm going to tell you today about a client of mine, and for confidentiality reasons, I'm going to call him Rick, about how he came to me in that classic situation where after years of marriage, he felt trapped in a sexless marriage. He was not connecting with his wife. They were not. There was very little intimacy. So I'm going to tell you one behavior that helped him completely change that. Before I do, if you're watching this on Facebook, I just want to please ask you, make comments, smiley faces, thumbs up, whatever you can to interact. And if you're watching this rebroadcast on YouTube, to the lower right, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. So before I talk about Rick and what was happening for him, I want to say there's a situation that I often see in couples that have been together for a long time. Life has taken over, and for a lot of couples in their late 30s, 40s, and even 50s, there's this acceptance. So I'm talking right now about two sides I see. This acceptance that sex just dies, and it's not really even reasonable to consider that that could come alive for them. Okay? And there's just an acceptance, and it becomes like this just stuck part of the infrastructure of their relationship. And then on the other side is what you see in the media of this couple in their 50s or 60s, and typically it's going to be on a Viagra commercial, and they're acting like they're in their 20s and they're in love and they're having so much sex, etc. Well, I want to say the reality that I see in my clients and the men that I coach and the relationships that they have is really more in the middle, where it's not this fantasy of constant sex, but it's not this other accepted reality and marital apathy of like nothing ever happens between them at all. And I'm going to tell you quickly about this one behavior that Rick changed in his marriage. But one other thing I want to speak to is I also see a lot of situations where with a couple, the woman has to feel emotionally connected in order to feel open to connecting sexually or physically, whereas the man has to feel physically connected in order to connect emotionally. And it feels like a weird trick, like how are we created in this way that feels so incompatible? Well, I love Esther Perel's work, and she talks about the domination of talk intimacy. And so the way that I coach is I'll talk to the man about, yes, you need to enhance your communication skills and become more present, and a lot of times I'll actually have a conversation with his wife or partner and say that intimacy can be achieved through other manners than just talk. And he's working on his talking skills, but I want to encourage you to work on connecting to your body as well. So with that said, in that background, these are some of the things that played into this one behavior that Rick changed in his relationship to connect more with his wife, get love, sex, and trust. And I want to be clear, I mentioned that we were able to do this in 6 weeks. We did work much longer than that because while a man can change behaviors and programming really quickly, to get it to stick and to be consistent and have it rebuild the trust of the marriage or relationship takes more time than just one time, than one trick. And this is really not a trick. It's a very obvious thing, but not so obvious for the guys that I work with. And what it was simply when he was going into that space with his wife and partner, and they were going into that, bicker zone. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? What happened here? Etc. Instead of the classic wanting to be right, he would focus on being connected. Okay? So it was this simple one behavior that helped him connect more physically, emotionally, and relationally with his wife. And that resulted in them refurbishing their sex life. Okay? Because what I see time and time again is the biggest question women have is, am I desired? Am I wanted? Okay? And one of the biggest ways that we men can show our partner that she's desired is by hearing her, seeing her, witnessing her. Okay. So when a fight would start with Rick, instead of saying, well, you didn't do this and you didn't tell me this and I thought this was happening, he would focus more on like, this is what I'm hearing you say. You're saying you don't feel like I show up. You feel like I don't do the things I tell you I'll do. And I'm hearing you say that because of that, you don't feel trusting of me and you don't feel like we're connected. Okay. Now, this might feel like a guy's laying over and just, being roadkill for his partner. Okay. But once he establishes that she feels like she has been heard, now there's connection. Okay. Now he has the opportunity to say, can I speak what was happening for me in that moment? And with Rick, it was as simple as his realization that I didn't realize that, picking up that thing at the market or taking care of that task that you had mentioned was that important to you. Now I know. Okay. I'm sorry I disappointed you and I want to do better. Okay. So that was one just quick scenario where he was focusing on the connection. Now there is a time where the perceptions are just different, where she has her story and his story is totally different. But what I want to say to the guys out there is, again, this is not about being right. This is about being connected. And so Rick changed that behavior and he was constantly using that as his guide point for how to engage in what would have typically gone down the rabbit hole as fights, distrusts, and his leaving those conversations like, oh shit, I just lost a ton of points and it's going to be forever until we can actually be intimate again because she's pissed at me. She doesn't trust me. Okay. So there was a situation where there was some different data, and I don't want to go too into detail, where his wife had a perception of how something transpired. He listened to her, he heard her, he reflected it back to her, and then he asked her, can I tell you my version? Okay. And then as he spoke about his version of the events, she was starting to come in saying, well, you didn't. And he just paused her and said, babe, I just want you to hear my version. Make sure that I've been heard. And then I want to hear your response. So this kind of container and structure is something that I train men in to do so that they can develop the muscles to understand how to be relational, which means how to be connected. You may have heard this phrase before, but at the end of the day, do you want to be right or do you want to be loved? Okay. And so for a lot of times, for a lot of us guys, this is really hard training because we spend a lot of our days kicking butt at our jobs, whatever we're doing, to get it right. Okay. Now I want to say to the men out there, the way to get it right in relationship is to connect, to stay connected to her. And this requires strength of the men out there, because to stay connected means you have confidence and trust in yourself and you can deal with what feels like you're taking a hit when she's coming at you and telling you you didn't do this or you're not enough this. And you can take that hit and you can know that you're worth more than just your most recent performance. Okay? And having that knowledge inside of yourself then enables you to drop the story of having to be right and knowing what's going on inside of you, and then having the confidence to step up and step into connection with your partner. Okay. Now I want to say real quick, a lot of the guys I work with come to me because they feel trapped. Damned if I do, damned if I don't. And by damned if I do means that damned if I try to make things better, or damned if I try to help her, love me more. Well, I want to say this. Number one loser strategy is trying to make her love you, trying to please her, and tolerating her. Okay. So as guys, it's really important that we're not trying to fix everything and we're trying to stay connected. Okay. And I've seen that time and time again with my male clients. And the guys who I work with come to me feeling like I can't do a damn thing right. They feel trapped and they feel almost, dare I say, dickless, weak by the fact that they don't know how to make the change they want in their relationship. Okay? And that's a tough place for a guy to be in. And that's a tough place for a guy to admit he needs help. And a lot of times, and I had this conversation with a client yesterday, he'll go see a therapist. And I want to be clear, in this situation, when you're feeling stuck in your relationship, you don't see a therapist. You can, of course you can. You see a therapist who works untraditionally and challenges you and does some of the things that I do that I'm about to tell you about. That's the guy you want to see, the specialist. And so with this client yesterday who had seen 3 therapists, I believe, over the course of a year or more, he said, Stuart, the thing that happens in our work together that didn't happen with my other therapists is I see the road. He's like, it's sometimes windy, but I see the road of progress. And I said to him, well, why is that? And he said, because you help me connect the dots. We come to each coaching session with a through line. It's not just me following the drama of the week, learning more about how I fix my problems, and then making the same dumb mistakes. Because you actually asked me to step into action to implement behavioral changes, whereas none of my therapists did that consistently. They would do that once in a while. So that was just a huge kudos and, a way that I understand that I work with men. Because guys, it's great to go to a therapist, and there's a lot of amazing therapists out there. And I was in therapy for years and years and years, and I loved the work I did. But it wasn't enough for me because it helped me, and I've heard this from other men. I was smarter. I knew more about how I wasn't showing up. I knew more about my problems. But then later on, I felt dumber knowing more about my problems and still making the same mistakes. Okay? And again, the reason that happens is because in therapy, typically, and again, I don't want to knock therapy. There's a ton of amazing therapists out there. Okay? But they don't connect the dots into implementation. And so today I talked about Rick and the one behavior he changed, which was an implementation of interactions in conflict with his partner, where he stopped focusing on being right. And in time, he learned this enormous freedom that he didn't have to live in this trap of being right or being wrong. Of course, he needed to speak his truth and not shut himself down, but he could do it in a way where his focus was on connection with his partner. So I don't know if I mentioned, losing my voice here a little bit, going to take a swig of water. Any comments, please let me know. Even on the rebroadcast, if you're watching this after the fact, I'd love to see any comments on the YouTube channel or on this Facebook, on my Facebook page, Stuart Mottola, Men's Relationship Coach. And for anyone who's interested, I would like to offer you a free copy of my book, Fixing You Is Killing Me, a conscious roadmap to knowing when to save and when to leave your relationship. And that book is free to the first man who sends me an email at info@stuartmottola.com. My name is spelled in the lower right there. And it would be a pleasure and honor to share my work with you. And again, I help men get unstuck in relationship and marriage. And it's been a pleasure and an honor to talk. And I want to give you a teaser for next week. I'm going to be talking to Colorado police officer Zach Johnson. And we're going to talk explicitly about how his going out and having an extramarital affair. And man, one other big piece here, which I'm going to leave as a teaser, what happened in that affair. and how that got him back to his marriage in a way that he'd never been before. So thanks so much for being with me. Check out my work at stuartmatola.com. I help men get unstuck in relationship, and have an amazing Friday. Bye.